must unite what has been set asunder.
We are TFR, Truth Frequency Radio.
Alex Gleason, the creator of the Gleason map, in the second portion of his book, Is the Bible from Heaven, or Is the Earth a Globe?, disproves the arguments generally advanced in favor of the so-called Copernican theory, and then proceeds to demonstrate beyond any reasonable doubt that the Earth is not a globe, that it does not move or rotate, that the sun moves, and that the moon is not an opaque or non-luminous body. The writer shows to the satisfaction of common sense that the modern universally accepted and taught theoretical astronomy, which claims the Earth to be a globe revolving around the sun, etc., is based on very weak arguments indeed, and that, on the contrary, it is not at all antagonistic to true science to accept the teachings of the Bible as they read, even the geological and astronomical utterances contained therein. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed, and I'm honored and glad to have as co-host with me again Kathy Dunson, who's been over the last hour freaking out because I didn't tell her the subject of the show until last minute, like I always do. But
right.
keeping you on your toes, Kathy.
Yeah,
how are you,
do.
sister?
I'm fine, thank you. Hi, everybody.
And also have special announcement. Those of you that are followers of the show, you know that we are involved in endeavor, Kathy and I and Ann and a few other people, in putting forth a project in a company called Sacred Word Publishing, of which we got the business license here in the state of Georgia on November 1st, just this past week or so ago, a couple weeks ago. And so this book that I read from, the details of this Alex Gleason book, which we just released and published, the second portion, Is the Earth a Globe?, which covers, as I said in summary, from what was this Lutheran Witness published or released April 21st, 1891, that his book covers all of this incredible information, which, like terra firma and 100 proofs the Earth is not a globe, and zetetic astronomy, by these prior individuals, in looking at and examining, investigating whether or not the Copernican theory and the whole heliocentric model was based in truth, like us, discovered that no, it was mostly not only theory, but outright lie. And so anybody, in my opinion, that does any kind of a real investigation into this as topic will learn and be brought to the same discernment as we have. Kathy, let me give you a chance to comment, and then I'll share with people where they can get access to this incredible material.
I am finding in these older texts that they're really fresh. They're clear, concise, and I learned so much from them. It seems like writings, more scientific, astronomical things in our recent time come across in my memory of reading such material as just kind of muddied, and it makes me think too of all of the constant drumbeat of articles that are coming out from NASA, space agencies, others, contractors or astronomers, or, those kinds of organizations, the space journals. It's just fantasy. And reading these books is very clear. It's about the experimentation. It's about, there was something that I read because I was really struck by some of the gems of wisdom He said in this book that you've just re-released, it becomes necessary for every well-informed man who would keep his relative place during this advanced stage of society to possess himself of all means of knowledge which might have been dispensed within former periods. And that also made me think of, the struggle that you have often with just reading all of the wisdom texts, the knowledge that's available. And here he made mention too of this. And that's what happens to the people who are inquiring, opening your mind, trying to investigate this subject among the many subjects that we investigate. But this one in particular, you're immediately shut down. And it's not in a way that brings debate, honest inquiry, searching, any sincere exchange of thought, rational ideas. It's just a way to, it's mind control. And that's what I really enjoyed seeing in this book, which is like terra firma or zetetic astronomy, these older books from the late 1800s, early 1900s. They're just very clear and so it's just such a joy to read them. So I'm so excited to see that these are the kinds of books that we're going to be looking at and finding, ways to bring out to people, to a wider audience. And I love what you've done with this new one where you've inserted a lot of graphics and some other text that lends itself, to other discoveries that we've made. Anyway, thank you.
No, you're welcome. And I think that because, that Kenneth sent me a link a long time ago. The only available copy of this book, which I have seen, that was up for sale, and it was well above $100 to purchase it. And I wanted to get it at the time. I just, couldn't see kicking down that much for this particular book. But then little did I know that was actually it was really a bargain, because you can't even find this book and much less have a chance to purchase it. And so that's why I was really excited when an individual named Rick Zimmerman approached me with wanting to release his work again to the public in new format. And so that's when I decided to, before then already the Most High had, led me to wanting to create Sacred Word Publishing for not only to re-release books like this, but also to publish a lot of the sacred scriptures and extra canonical material, which so many people have not read and not studied, and which is little available in book form. And I know myself, I have preference for reading such material in book form rather than on a computer. And this was actually before I had a Kindle, and so that's a different way for me to approach some of this material. But I'm old school, and I like to be away, disconnected from my computer when I'm studying an excessive amount of material. And I like to be outside in the sunshine, hanging out with my cats and my rose bushes, and the sun and the clouds and the wind, and just being connected to the creation in that way. I feel a really profound and intimate sense of relationship with the Creator when just tied to the creation and in a moment and in that regard. And so that's where I like to do most of my study, rather than being inside and having to be connected to computer. And so I know a lot of other people are similar in that regard and would appreciate having access to this material again in book format. And so that's one of the projects I've been working on for the past couple of months. And just late last night I published it, and then this morning I released it in book form. And so we will put into the chat room where you can go to actually get it It's like $19, and it's the second portion, which I do plan at some point releasing the entirety of the book. Is the Bible? I forget the first part. Inspired, no, is the Bible from heaven? And then the second portion of Gleason's book is the Earth a globe? And I will compile and put that together all in singular format. But I wanted to go ahead and release this, especially since we were going to do this show, and I was going to speak on so much of the new material that I had discovered, which is connected to this. Because now that I have this profound understanding, and this is revelation, and studying the fullness of Scripture and rereading all of that which I had spent decades studying and reading. It's the gospel was lending giving new light to so much that has been encoded and connected to this as revelation, but which we have all had to gloss over because we didn't have the mind to understand how it fit into the real, as far as the reality of the enclosed world system, and that it is the sun and the moon which move in circuit above the face of the earth, rather than the earth being one of 9 planets which moves in orbit as it spins, orbits annually around the sun as it daily spins like a top, as it dances around it. But
Then
yes.
I wonder, have you run across when it was that the church started to bend to the heliocentric view of the universe, of the solar system?
I think it was, with Copernicus and Galileo and Kepler, around kind of all the
500
same
years.
time. Yeah, the 500 years, and then the whole Jesuit Big Bang and all of that. I think, because I really believe that it was a conspiracy, that it all, as I present in my books, that it's all connected to Lucifer's declaration that he wants to establish his throne above the stars and the clouds of God, to be to sit his throne in the sides of the north above the mount of the congregation, and to be like the Most High, and that the whole heliocentric, the replacement of the earth as the focus, the geocentric universe, and the earth as being basically the only, so-called plane of existence where we could actually live and inhabit and dwell upon, but that the whole heliocentric worldview is part of his, replacement theology, and creating a substitute system, putting the sun as first and foremost in this new system. But go ahead.
Well, now that we're looking at this and asking the questions, it makes perfect sense. I mean, of course, he would be planning long term, knowing what is coming. I mean, he knows the Scripture better than
exactly.
And it all makes sense that this has been set up for centuries and even longer, really, but in high gear for centuries, and come through all the different levels that it has, and increasing with, movie theaters weren't movie companies using the globe even pre-NASA. I believe that there were some intros where they were using a globe and a little airplane going around. So, this has been in the works. Those are institutions that are highly controlled and have people who are at the leads who are Satanists. And so I don't think we should be surprised when we are at a level of understanding and we've grasped this concept and are studying it more deeply, that the reason why makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I fully agree. Now that I can look back and see, because even the Illuminati, even the Bilderberg elite, they plan ahead decades in advance, centuries in advance. And Lucifer, in my opinion, he has most certainly been pushing for the New World Order and quote unquote global domination since even before Atlantis, before the destruction of the Tower of Babel. And so it's certainly looking back how it is that the Darwinian, Darwinism is all based upon the Copernican model and all of humanity embracing the heliocentric worldview. It makes sense to me how all these things are tied together and connected with, the first we evolved of monkeys, that there are all these multiple Earths and planetary systems, and that every star is a possible sun that has all of its own planetary subjects, and that if they're in the Goldilocks zone and at the perfect distant extent from this particular sun, that they could then randomly evolve life. I mean, all of that is tied into, again, the next portion and aspect of it, which is, in my opinion, the whole ancient alien, the being the reign of the Antichrist and the coming forth of the ancient alien as the gods who created us so long ago, but then left for whatever reason and are coming back at the end of days to save us from ourselves. I mean, all of that fits into this as well. And it's basically Lucifer wanting to be like the Most High. And we know that the sun is the god of this replacement theology, and that it is also symbolic of Lucifer as the light bearer, as the the sun god of these pagan theologies.
It's interesting to me looking back in the period of NASA, because before that, reading his book today prompted me to think of some of these things from that period of time, the late 1800s, early 1900s, and prior to that. They had no way to stand out and see a globe, right? And so along comes NASA, and here is supposedly some hard kind of evidence that we live on a globe, and and now that we can look back and we realize, no, they haven't taken a picture. There are no satellites. There's no space debris up there. I mean, there was a recent article, just in the last day, saying that they called it space junk falling from space, and it's not. I mean, it's a plane engine probably, and the report said all that, but the title is From Space, and the story is something fell from space to inculcate this erroneous idea that there is all this stuff flying around, and there is not. It was such a ridiculous story. They even said that they were contemplating putting some kind of, and they showed a cartoon of a janitor, a space janitor up there to scoop up all the space junk. This is the crazy stories that are out there, and people don't question it. And it's coming out more and more frequently. The 60s, the early 70s, when we had the space missions, that was kind of a hard thing, rockets in space. But now SpaceX and all that, those things fail constantly, and they just talk the talk. And so I see more and more stories that are just fiction tales woven together that, there's really nothing to them, but people ingest this in the movies. I mean, all of this stuff is fantasy. So we're just being mind controlled, programmed to think this way, more and more, just with something out of thin air.
Right. In which, in the show that we did with Mark Sargent, we talked about all these supposed 20,000 satellites and all this space debris up there, and how it is that, they're not running into each other, because they're most certainly, if there's 20,000 satellites up there and they're all going different directions all at the same time, there's going to be collisions. Just like on the freeways, there's accidents. There's going to be these collisions, and then, as it showed in that movie Gravity, if you have one satellite breaking up in the debris, it's going to, just like a domino effect, affect all the other satellites and the so-called International Space Station, and that all of them would be affected and would be destroyed and disabled from having all these impacts with this so-called space debris. And it only would take something the size of even less than a pea traveling at however excessive amounts of speed, they saying however fast the International Space Station is going, just maintaining its orbit as it falls in circle around the globe, the sphere of the Earth, and then hitting even a pea-sized projectile, it would cause devastating, massive amounts of destruction. And none of this ever happens.
No.
No maintenance of any satellite.
No, see, that's reality. We are so discouraged from looking at the reality, posing what would really happen in our questions. Instead, we're just given a diet of fantasy. National Geographic is going to do a series on Mars, imagining, even the title says that, imagining the planet's first colonists, and they're going to set up this virtual reality Mars outpost in the middle of New York City. So, so people think, oh, Mars is real. This is what we're doing, but that's not true. That's not the reality. And the thing that I love, and the books, like you're going to be publishing more of these books, that's where I first went to learn about what's going on, because of course, there isn't really, other than your books, much out there on the topic of flat Earth. But you can go back to these older publications, and they talk about it in plain terms, in experimentation. And that's what's really wonderful to see, is people are getting out there and they're experimenting. They're asking the real questions. It's not fantasy, and they need to be encouraged, and people need to do more of that.
Right. And also, in bringing these old books forward again, it helps people to realize that this debate has been going on for a very long time, and there have been multiple scientists and very advanced thinkers that have asked very significant and very profound questions with regard to this as topic. And so that's why I thought it was important to republish and to re-release Alex Gleason, especially with him being, the map maker of the Gleason map, which I think is, one of the best. Of course, I'm not saying it's absolutely 100% accurate or correct, but certainly with regard to the circle of the Earth as described by Isaiah, it is one of those that is very advanced in all the things that you can do with it. And as far as tying together the time zones, understanding latitude and longitude and all of that. And we know that the elites have this as occult knowledge, and that they are just laughing at the rest of humanity for buying into the heliocentric worldview when they absolutely know different and better. And the fact that they display this knowledge as occult information as an emblem on the flag of the United Nations shows to me just how much they do know it as truth, and how much they are laughing at the rest of us for buying into the lunacy of the postulation, the theory, unprovable theory of the heliocentric Copernican model for world. And so, these books, Zetetic Astronomy, this Gleason book, William Carpenter's 100 Proofs the Earth is Not a Globe, the Terra Firma, those are very important books to read, in my opinion, for anybody that is beginning to investigate this. And they should be foundational material for the examination of this as topic.
And I know for me, I want to go back and reread, because when I first read them, I was seeking the information to help form my opinion or, to understand what was really going on. And now, after a year and a half looking into all of this and having formed my opinion, I mean, I'm really able to pull away the cobwebs and of the indoctrination and understand it. So going back and reading things again, or seeing some of the videos that are more foundational, I think, to the understanding, it really helps. It helps immensely for me.
Yeah, I agree. And it's just like, revisiting the scriptures now that we have new eyes and new discernment. All these different things that are found within, which we'll go into when we come back from this first break. I'll share some of the new things that I've discovered in reading some of these extra biblical texts, and I'll get you to comment on them. But it's fascinating how much material out there and how much scriptural proof of this as truth is available. All right, we'll be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody. There's a question about the supermoon that's coming up. I believe it's on Monday, and Kathy wanted me to address this, and so I'll comment on this, but in order for me to do so, it's important for all of you to understand that according to the book of Enoch, as well as the extra biblical texts which speak about the firmament and the vaulted dome of the earth and the two heavens, the first and the second heaven, the first heaven being the lower atmosphere, and the second heaven being what we would call outer space. It's important to know that these two areas are divided into 7 segments, and that the 7 planets. Now, when I'm speaking about the planets, I'm including the sun and the moon, along with Venus, Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. That the Book of Enoch, Second Enoch, as well as other texts like the Chronicles of Jeremiah, they speak about this portion, these 7 areas being that the circuits of these different planets are located on these different levels, which is, according to it, the moon is on the lowest level and the sun is on the 4th level, I believe. I'll read the passage here in just a minute, but it helps you to understand how it is that the sun and the moon will cover the face of the sun for what is a solar eclipse, and that we see it that way, and that also what occurs with the lunar eclipse, that this is not of course it's not the earth that is getting in the way which causes that, but that it is another object. And even the second book of Enoch references this object as being the lesser or the inferior moon, which makes sense to me, because in the show that I did with Rob Skiba, where we talked about the release of my book, The Firmament Vaulted Dome of the Earth, he mentioned this other object called Ritu, I believe it is, or Kiku, Ragu, something like that. But anyways, and I had mentioned the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a Hindu text that speaks about the cosmology. And interestingly enough, it also affirms the movement of the sun, as I had decrypted it from not only the book of Enoch, the courses on the heavenly luminaries, but also with the book of Solomon, Ecclesiastes, where he describes in the Targum translations of chapter 1, verses 3 through 7, the movement of the sun in the same way that is elaborated upon in the book of Enoch. And so I'll share that in just a minute, but comments about that moon, because I don't remember the exact.
Zen, your audio is breaking up.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. Oh, that's better.
Okay, sorry. I don't know what's going on, but hopefully it'll be good. But anyways, in the question that was given to me on my Facebook, I believe they were asking me how it is that we can look to the supermoon to confirm the flat Earth. Well, to really, as far as where the sun is in its courses, going through the six gates of heaven, you can't really look to it for that. Supposedly, it's called the supermoon because it's going to, and now correct me if I'm wrong on this, but isn't it supposed to be the largest moon as far as because it's closer to the Earth than at any other time of the year?
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
but I think it happens every so often.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so as far as confirming as far as the flat Earth cosmology, well, we know that the moon and the sun are moving in cycle above the Earth, and that in and of itself confirms, well, first that the Earth is not moving as the science shows, as well as the Bible puts forth in many scriptures that the Earth is not moving, which is the reason why Enoch, in speaking about the movement of the heavenly luminaries, he describes in all of these different chapters the movement of the sun and the moon and all the heavenly luminaries, the stars and the planets as the wandering stars. But there's not one passage or verse which talks about the earth moving. And this is also why Joshua was given, when he was told to cause the sun from going down and setting, is so that they could elongate the day and wipe out the rest of the giants that they were at war against. Uh, Joshua was given the authority to stop the sun and the moon because they are the ones that actually move in circuit. And so this affirms that it is in fact the sun and the moon which move in above the face of the earth, as is described by so many, especially even in Ecclesiastes. Solomon describes 29 times how everything is folly, all is folly under the sun, um, which, in the regular heliocentric worldview, the sun never ever takes a place or a position where it is above any of the planets. It being the center as the pivot for the orbits of all the planets, the sun would always be to the side of all of the planets as they move in orbit on the heliocentric plane. And so that in and of itself affirms the model of the enclosed world system. As far as the supermoon in specific, um, they're nothing other than, it, like all the other phases of the moon, show that it's the moon moving above the earth, um, which again affirms the flat earth uh, principle and the premise of the enclosed world system. But as far as the supermoon itself, it's just, basically another, even though it is the so-called closest and the largest, it's still just all part of the regular revolutions and cycles of the moon as it goes through its phases and its orbital motion, its movements above the plane of the earth, just like the sun and all of the other planets are said to do. But
Well, there's
I'll
so many things going on with the moon. It's just fascinating to think about, and I think what we've been taught all along leaves a lot to be desired.
absolutely, especially since the NASA and science affirms that the moon is in synchronous rotation with that of the Earth, which is why we always see just one side of it. And that, the Earth, and as the Earth spins in 24-hour daily cycle, that the moon maintains exact synchronous orbit and rotation with us, um, which is in itself flawed, because if you look at the way that the moon orbits and moves, it goes counterclockwise, and so it's completely opposite of what is affirmed by NASA, because the Earth is supposedly moving in a clockwise fashion, and that the moon is supposedly moving in synchronous orbit like that. But both the sun and the moon and all the other heavenly luminaries move in counterclockwise. It looks clockwise if you're looking up towards Polaris, but if you're looking down, as Enoch describes in the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, he describes the sun and the moon and the heavenly luminaries moving from east to west and then north to east, which again, if you're looking down from above, that makes sense. But if you're looking up from the ground towards Polaris, it would be in the opposite. But again, all of that aligns with what Enoch describes and what is described in Scripture. And to affirm that, I'll share a few passages here. It says this in the Chronicles of Jeremiah: "The 7 days of the week are called after the 7 planets: the sun, Venus, Mercury, the moon, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. In what order are they placed in heaven? They are distributed there as sun and moon and the 5 planets. The firmament is divided into 7 degrees, one above the other. There are 7 distinct places for these 7 planets, and this is their order. The first degree is near the earth, and this lowest degree is the habitation of the moon, in which the moon makes a circuit around the firmament. The second degree is the habitation of Mercury, and it describes its circuit in the firmament. The third degree is the habitation of Venus. The fourth degree is the middle of them is the habitation of the sun, which completes its circuit of the heaven in 12 months. The fifth degree is the habitation of Mars. The sixth degree is, the fifth degree is the habitation of Mars, which makes its circuit in the firmament. The seventh degree is the highest of all, the habitation of Saturn, which completes its circuit in 3 years. Hence, the rabbis have said that the orbit, notice, the orbit of the sun and the circuit of the moon, the order of the stars, and the arrangement of the planets, the calculation of their circuits, the length of the days, and the division of the hours, which are the first long and then become gradually shorter, are all the work of God. And so here you see in this commentary that it is most certainly the sun, the moon, and the other heavenly planets which are said to move in circuit above the earth. And I'll share a few more passages here as well. Let me get you to comment while I go to this next one, Kathy.
I'm wondering, I don't recall a particular passage, but maybe you have one in mind. The sun and the moon, would they be sentient as well?
Yes, you mean as far as
like the stars? Yeah, I was thinking. I thought in the in your book about decrypting the book of Enoch that the sun was would have been sentient in the way that it would move through the different gates.
Yes, it is. And the reason I say that and declare that in my book is because the sun, as it's moving in circuit through these different gates, it every day changes its revolution, its velocity and its speed, meaning that as it circles and comes closer towards the North Pole, it has to slow down its circuit in order to remain, to keep this cycle of one day and one revolution equivalent. And the same thing for when it is widening its arc and its revolution as it moves towards the Tropic of Capricorn. because when it is on the Tropic of Capricorn, for what is the longest night for those that are in the northern hemisphere plane, the longest night and shortest day, it has to move at very quick speed at a accelerated velocity in order to maintain traveling what is twice as wide an arc and revolution as that it does when it is on the Tropic of Cancer and nearest the North Pole as center of the Earth and plane. And so, yes, in my opinion, and also the Book of Enoch associates the various the stars and also the sun as being lit up by 100 angels, and the stars are also associated with the angels, and that they have intelligence and consciousness because of that. In fact, it's my opinion that all of creation, because it is light and it is connected to God, that it all has consciousness to some degree, because in that it is all sacred and it is all a portion of God. And just like with the fly and even the cell, even at the very smallest microcosm of the creation, you see intelligent design reflected in it. The DNA, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating, and it all reflects that, it is all brought together in grand intelligence through very much thought out and well planned, as far as the creator in putting together and manifesting all things, that the creation on every level reflects that design and that intelligence.
That may be a part of the supermoon too. It's timing to come in closer circuit to the Earth. And we see it larger.
Yeah, well, I think the way that the heavens are set up as a giant timepiece, the way that the sun gives us the equivalence of a day, and that the phases of the moon, one quarter of its phase is equivalent to a week, in the fullness of all four of its phases, equivalent to that of a month, and 12 months of both the cycles of the sun and the moon, the equivalent of a lunar and a solar year, and even the stars through the sun moving through the 12 constellations of the zodiac is called what is the great year, which is 25,000. I forget exactly. I think it's 25,820 years or something like that, which is the amount of years that pass for the sun to move through all 12 houses of the zodiac. I mean, all of that is part of the timekeeping mechanism of creation as well. It's absolutely fascinating. But that leads me to a passage that I just only recently discovered 2 days ago, which is absolutely fascinating as well. It's from a book called Clement, the first epistle of Clement. It says this: "The heavens are moved by his direction and obey him in peace. Day and night accomplish the course assigned to them by him, without hindrance one to another. The sun and the moon and the dancing stars, according to his appointment, circle in harmony within the bounds assigned to them, without any swerving aside. The earth bearing fruit in fulfillment of his will at her proper seasons, putteth forth the food that supplieth abundantly both men and beasts, and all the living things which are thereupon, making no dissension, neither altering anything which he hath decreed. Moreover, the inscrutable depths of the abysses and the unalterable statutes of their nether regions are constrained by the same ordinances. This is an interesting part as well. The basin of the boundless sea, gathered together by his workmanship into its reservoirs, passeth not the barriers wherewith it is surrounded, but even as he ordered it, so it doeth. For he said, so far shalt thou come, and thy waves shall be broken within thee. The ocean, which is impassable for men, and the worlds beyond it, are directed by the same ordinances of the Master. The seasons of spring and summer and autumn and winter give way in succession one to another in peace. The winds in their several quarters, all their proper season, fulfill their ministry without disturbance, and the ever-flowing fountains created for enjoyment and health without fail give their breaths which sustain the life for men. Yea, the smallest of living things come together in concord and peace. All these things the great Creator and Master of the universe ordered to be in peace and concord, doing good unto all things, but far beyond the rest unto us who have taken refuge in his compassionate mercies, through our Lord Jesus Christ, to whom be the glory and majesty forever and ever. Amen. 1 Clement chapter 20, verse 1 through 12.
That's exactly what we were talking about.
Yes, isn't it?
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Everything obeys its creator, you know. It's, and I think we think that, you know, it's all just a madhouse out there. Everything's running riot, and you know, that's what science would have us believe. It's all random and by chance, but no, everything is ordained, and you know, all creation groans, everything. So it's, you know, we forget the glory and the majesty.
Yes, we do. And we overlook it. And because science has declared to us and tried to establish in their postulation that everything is just random and it's all just chaos, and it all has come forth of that random chaos, that there's no intelligent design, and that there's no superior being or entity which contrived it in the way that it is put together. All that to me is just complete ignorance, because the creation itself, as we were talking about earlier, every aspect of it, from the macrocosm to the microcosm, every portion of it reflects the intelligence of that incredible design that was put forth by God in manifesting it in the way that it has come together. And if you can't see that, that is just utterly just ignorant to me.
Well, they would say your rose bush is your cat, and your cat is your rose bush.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you know, they, of course, even just the DNA.
I know.
For it to come about as random is just absolute insanity, and for people to not see and to feel recognition of the Creator and everything that they see. I see God reflected in everything, you know, especially hanging out with my cats and just watching the rose bush bloom, and the way that the sun moves across the sky, and the clouds stream, and the grass grows, and the seasons unfold. All that to me is so just perfect harmony, and it just screams, you know, that it was manifest by a grand designer, the grand architect, God, the Father.
And coming to the realization that it is this biblically created firmament enclosed plane, as it is laid out very clearly in the scripture. I mean, I look at everything differently. I look at the sun so differently. It's welcoming, you know, and the moon. I always was fascinated by the moon as it was, and over the years I've learned so many other things, but then coming to this realization and seeing it gives off cold light, you know, there's just so many, well, and then realizing, yes, absolutely, it's self-luminous. The things that we have been taught that to our own eyes, they tell us differently, and it supports scripture.
Yeah, and I don't have this particular passage before me, but I'll have to pull it up again. But I was reading in one of these extra biblical texts just recently, it was talking about the light of the moon, and you know how we know that the light of the moon and the sun are very different. But in this passage, it was speaking about how the moon's light, because it has a potency that is different from that of the sun, but that it actually delivers the healing properties to the plants and the herbs, that they receive their gifts and their healing properties from the light of the moon because of its distinction and differentiation from that of the light of the sun, which I thought that was absolutely fascinating. Um, and because we know absolutely that the light of the moon is different from that of the sun.
That would be an interesting thing to research. I don't have any idea about that, but I wouldn't be surprised to find out about truth in that.
Oh yeah, most certainly. Well, we do know that according to science, that the moon's light, they say, has a detrimental effect, and can drive people and creatures crazy. But that, again, with the plants, that might be utilized differently and give them that healing power. All right, we'll be right back, everyone. Welcome back for second hour, everybody. I'm going to share with you a couple more really interesting passages that I found. I think you're going to get a kick out of this one. I was reading a book called As It Comes to Pass, which is a story about the legends surrounding King Solomon and also King David, which talk about some of the Arabic scriptures and Syrian or Aramaic translations of a lot of texts that we no longer have, which describe some of the what are Hebrew and Jewish folklores talking about Solomon and David. And there's this book, one of these fairy tale like stories called Solomon and Balkis. And Balkis is the name of the Queen of Sheba before Solomon ever met her. And in this particular story, it was talking about how Solomon would gather together with his armies and some of his advisors, and also with the animals, because he was given not only control over the demons, that he, in the Testament of Solomon, he was given this ring, and they allowed him to have control over the demons and the fallen angels, and he used them to build the temple, the holy temple, dedicated unto God initially, but that Solomon also had a flying carpet. Now, all of us know about the story of Aladdin and how he had a flying carpet, but in some of these old tales about Solomon, they describe him as just gathering together with his people and hopping on this flying carpet and going and looking through the world and just seeing what he would find. And there was one story about a mysterious castle that he had located, that he had seen from above, and it was an ancient complex. It was like an ancient megalithic site, which I thought was very interesting. But in this story, there's just one specific, he had sent forth these birds. He had this one bird, which was called a opaque, that had the ability to see and spot water, like it could sense it through the earth. And so this bird would always lead the Solomon and his armies as they were wandering and searching through the earth. and he would always find them a suitable spot to land, and then to, to give water and to refresh themselves and all that. But anyways, this Hopoi, I guess I'm saying it right, but he had met this other bird that told him about the Queen of Sheba, and so this bird led him to there, and he was late, and so Solomon sent out a cormorant, whatever, I guess that's a type of bird, and it said this about the cormorant that went out in looking for this Hopoi, which I thought you would find this interesting. It says this: the cormorant rose up to the sky and looked all over the earth, as a man would look at the dish in front of him, while he yet looked hither and there. Lo, from the direction of the men came the Hopoi. Isn't that interesting? Because
the hot air balloonist, or the balloonists. Yeah, they're not hot air, but yeah.
He described the Earth as an upturned disc, a disc with an upturned edge. And here in this book, it speaks about the Earth as being like a dish, as if, a man looks upon a dish. And so I thought that was quite interesting, which that also, that whole Pizza Hut commercial with that little alien talking about how his world is in the shape of a pizza, same kind of thing. But
I've come across beyond the Picard balloonist, and he was the first who I don't recall how high he got. Do you remember?
No,
anyway,
I set a record.
Right, absolutely. But he looked out and saw it. It looked like a dish or a disc. But I've found at least two other accounts, newspaper articles from the 1800s of balloonists who had the same thing. They went up high, and they remarked that it looked like, it was flat. And that I just happened on those. Those are pure, divine chance that I came across those. Think how many other accounts there are for, whatever reason, but that support a flat enclosed plane. So that we just don't know about. It's kind of like the skulls; they're hidden from us.
Right. Yeah, it's which, just like this particular passage from the Solomon text.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just amazing how anybody that truly goes up there and sees it and looks upon it, that it is confirmed in that kind of manner. And I'm going to share a couple other passages. This is, even though, a lot of people will probably criticize me for, but this is from the Book of Moses, which is an LDS text. But it's interesting because it also, and I'm not saying this is inspired in any way. I don't want to be, criticized more than I already am. But anyways, this is interesting. In a couple verses, it gives a description of this in the same kind of way. It says this in verse 8. And it came to pass that Moses looked and beheld the world upon which he was created. And Moses beheld the world and the ends thereof. And all the children of men which are and which were created, of the same he greatly marveled and wondered. And in verse 27 it says this: and it came to pass, as the voice was still speaking, Moses cast his eyes and beheld the earth, yea, even all of it. And there was not a particle of it which he did not behold, discerning it by the Spirit of God. And he beheld also the inhabitants thereof, and there was not a soul which he beheld not. And he discerned them by the Spirit of God, and their numbers were great, even numberless as the sand upon the seashore. And he beheld many lands, and each land was called earth, and there were inhabitants on the face thereof. And so just like, those three passages which I bring up in my Flat Earth book, the one Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch, I talk about how when Yeshua returns, every eye shall see him. and that it speaks about the ends of the earth and how the earth as a flat circular plane, um, that it's only when you understand it as such that this makes sense, how as to how every eye can see him when he returns, if the world is in fact in the shape of a ball or a sphere or a globe. The same thing with Nebuchadnezzar's dream with the tree growing up in the middle of the earth, a great tree, and how it could be seen from the ends of the earth. And the other thing with Yeshua being taken up to an exceedingly high mountain, and then and shown all the kingdoms of the world to the ends of the earth, and how those things only make sense when you understand that the earth is a flat circular plane, which again from that passage that I read, which I didn't get to highlight it, but that passage that I had read just recently from the book of Clement. Let me bring that up again real quick.
I was going to say real quick, I had an image today I was looking at that had, across cultures, ancient cultures, like you're reading this LDS text, Egyptian, Norse, Hindu, Mayan, Inca, Navajo, and the Hebrew, they all had an enclosed system that is what they believed in. That was the system they believed until, 500 years ago. And then NASA reaffirms this globe ball shaped, well, it's supposed to be a spheroid. So I want to be sure we know that.
Right, oblate spheroid, yeah.
Oblate spheroid,
right.
yeah. Bulging
Right.
in the middle, the water's, globbed up there at the center of it.
Right.
Except from space, when you look at it.
Yes, exactly. All right, let me look up this one thing, and then I'm going to share this passage again, because this is very interesting as well, this particular aspect of this passage, but I want to look up this word that it uses in there just to make sure. But the word is basin, and so let me look up the definition. Basin is a kitchen sink, a large bowl that is used for mixing, cooking, or serving food. And so basin is like a large bowl. Well, it's interesting that in this passage, it describes the earth and its ability to contain all the oceans as a basin, which, only makes sense if it's a flat plane, and then, sea level is determined by the basin, the same thing as a flat disk with upturned edge. All of that makes sense when you apply it to this as understanding, but you can't consider it that way with the globe. And so let me read the portion of Clement which talks about this again, to highlight this, and then I'll share one more passage which is very interesting in this. It says, moreover, the inscrutable depths of the abysses and the unutterable statutes of the nether regions are constrained by the same ordinances. The basin of the boundless sea, gathered together by his workmanship into its reservoirs, passeth not the barriers wherewith it is surrounded, but even as he ordered it, so it doeth. For he said, so far shalt thou come, and thy waves shall be broken within thee. The ocean which is impassable for men, and the worlds beyond it are directed by the same ordinance of the master. And so here he's describing the earth and the shape of the earth as a basin, as a bowl, and that is how the oceans are contained. Because again, all the oceans of the world unite to form one ocean. It's the world ocean, and they're all tied together. It's not 7 different oceans, and there's nowhere that it comes together in rise as it shows on on the sphere of the earth, the oceans are completely flat and level. And sea level is what determines where the earth is separated from the waters. And when we come back from this, well, actually, before we go to the next break, I'll have to pull it up, but I'm going to share with you. Yeah, please go ahead.
Well, I've been thinking about, the wax seals where you put your impression. It occurs to me that it's kind of like the Father puts his impression on his creation, and that's the way a seal looks with, the way the wax forms up around the side. It's kind of like the basin that you're describing.
Right, exactly.
And just looking at an image of it right now, it struck me that that's kind of like, that's the Father's image, his seal that he's put on there. And that's why it looks like that. I know that Pastor Odell had done something about that. And the Strongs actually did say flat. I don't remember what the word was or what the verse was. Maybe it was from Job. Maybe you remember. It was from Job. I don't remember what it was though, but it had to do with that too. It amazes me. Yes, it amazes me how all these things come together and connect and make sense, and you can see it in the imagery itself. Just looking at it looks like a basin with an upturned edge, and the oceans are contained within. So that's Kathy 2 cents.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, absolutely, and those are fascinating. Because none of this would ever make sense if you just tried to apply it to the Earth as being a globe, which is, again, the reason why when I could not make sense of the Book of Enoch, the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, it wasn't until I applied all of those motions to the Earth as a flat circular plane that I was then able to unlock and decrypt all of that material, which is why I wrote my 9th book, Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch. But anyways, let me share this also, and it's from a different passage, but it speaks about the same kind of thing, as far as the oceans all being contained like that. All right, it says this, and this is from the Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 3 through 7 that I decrypted from the Targum, which talks about the movements of the sun and the as it goes through the 6 gates of heaven. But the portion that I didn't really highlight and emphasize is the last part of that scripture. And for those that don't know what I'm talking about, I'll share with you in the chat room. You can look it up on YouTube. Rob put out a portion of the interview that we did. Zen Garcia plots the courses of the sun, and it shows the movements of the sun through the 6 gates of heaven as I decrypt in the Book of Enoch. Kathy will share that with y'all, and I'm going to read this passage from verse 7. It says this: all the rivers and springs of water continually flow into the water of the ocean, which surrounds the world like a ring. But the ocean is not filled, and the place is where the rivers continually flow. They return there in order to flow from the spouts of the deep. And so here again, Solomon is describing, like Clement did in that epistle, and also as Enoch does, that Antarctica is the outer edge, and it's not a continent at the South Pole, but it's the outer edge. It's the ring which keeps the oceans from going beyond its boundaries. Go ahead, Kathy. You had something to say.
I found that Rob wrote a really great article about that, the flat breadth of the earth.
Oh, really?
Job 38 in verse 14 says, it is turned as clay to the seal, and they stand as a garment. So that was and that was where okay, yeah, it's like clay under the seal, and its features stand out like a garment. Is I think King James. That's Job 38:14.
Yeah, that all of that is so very fascinating. Um, I'm gonna look up this one other thing really quick, and then I'm gonna comment on because this is also what we're talking about here is also tied to the tides, as I will explain. And I just added this information to the firmament book, which I'll share that here in just a minute. Let me read this verse again and comment on it, and then I'll share how it is that it's tied to the tides. Okay, it says again, all the rivers and springs of water continually flow into the water of the ocean, which surrounds the world like a ring. But the ocean is not filled, and to the places where the rivers continually flow, they return there in order to flow from the spouts of the deep. And so the question is, what is the spouts of the deep? And do in fact the oceans come together as is described here in this verse? And most certainly they do, because as I said, the Antarctic ice wall is the outer edge of the circle of the earth, and that is the boundary which the oceans cannot go beyond. But here's the aspect of this whole ocean system which most people do not understand and do not know about. And that is that at the very North Pole, at the very center of the Earth plane, there is a mountain, the magnetic mountain called Rupes Negra. It means black rock. And this magnetic mountain, it's made of lodestone, and it attracts all the needles of the compasses of the world, which is why they always point north and towards the center of the earth plane. But what a lot of people don't understand and don't know about is that this mountain is surrounded by a giant whirlpool, and that this whirlpool is what actually creates the tides, because this whirlpool sucks all the oceans down into the interior of the earth, and in pulling together all the oceans, it drops in a spout. It sucks it all down and drops it into a spout towards the center of the earth, and it creates the rivers of Sheol. But the other aspect of this particular whirlpool is that every 6 hours it changes direction. And whereas it will suck all the oceans and drain them into the interior of the earth, every 6 hours it will switch direction, and for 6 hours it will spew out and actually flood and spit out the oceans from the interior of the earth back out onto the earth plane. And so that's what creates high tide. And when it's actually sucking the oceans in and draining them into the interior of the earth, it creates low tide. And to give you some verses which speak about this, let me share this. Here's a couple of verses. It says this: the 14th century writings Inventio Fortunata, which all of this information that I'm reading from now is going to be part of my my Paradise, the Sides of the North, and the Mount of the Congregation, where I speak about what the different explorers actually located at the top, at the center of the North Pole. I give grand description of this Rupes Negra, the also the Grand Whirlpool, which is located there, and the descriptions of some of the interactions of the different explorers that actually saw and had direct experience with these particular phenomena. Yes.
There's a video, I think you'd sent me this about the tides by
Yes.
Flatwater, called What Causes Tides and Winds?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
good.
yes.
Yeah, I found that. I'll put that in the
Okay,
chat.
good. All right, excellent. And then, yeah, I'll read this, and then I'll share something else when we come back from break. But it says this. I'll read as much as I can right now. The 14th century writings Inventio Fortunata by Nicholas de Lina and the Itinerarium of Jacob Sinoian mentions the magnetic mountains being so powerful that it pulled the nails right out of the explorers' boats. The encircling whirlpool and 4 directional rivers surrounding the mountain were said to change every 6 hours, causing the tides, comparing them to the breath of God at the navel of the earth, inhaling and exhaling the great seas. The cartographer Gerardus Mercator's 16th century map below informs us that the waters of the oceans are carried northward to the pole through these rivers with great force, such that no wind could make a ship sail against the current. The waters then disappear into an enormous whirlpool beneath the mountain at the pole and are absorbed into the bowels of the earth. Here's a quote. A monstrous gulf in the sea, towards which from all sides the billows of the sea, coming from remote parts, converge and run together as though brought there by a conduit, pouring into these mysterious abysses of nature. They are as though devoured thereby, and should it happen that a vessel pass there, it is seized and drawn away with such powerful violence of the waves that this hungry force immediately swallows it up, never to appear again. Fridolcio Nansen has found mentions of a great northern whirlpool in the Norse legends of the world's well, Heliocentric, which causes the tides by pushing and pulling water through its subterranean channels. Isidore of Seville, circa 560 to 6. We'll pick it up when we come back. Be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. And actually, before I read this passage from the Norse in mention of this particular same whirlpool, I want to read the comment that I shared with an individual that asked me about the tides, that I read on a comment on the video that I released on the firmament that I did with Rob Skiba. And this will set the precedence for the rest of these comments. It says this, and then this is part of my firmament book as well on the tides. In studying about the northern polar regions, I have been led to an alternative answer for the occurrence of these particular events. Speaking of the tides, this issue has remained a riddle even for those that are now long studied in research on the flat Earth. The answer I am going to share has to do with the whirlpool located in the center of the Earth plane. And because this book is already so lengthy, I am only going to quickly touch upon it by sharing my response to a comment which somebody posted on a video interview that I did with Rob Skiba on the release of this book, August 10th, 2016. Like this book, the video is entitled The Firmament Vaulted Dome of the Earth, and can be found on both of my YouTube channels, Zendar and Endeavor Freedom. Before I share the comment, I would like first to mention a couple of side notes which can be found on Gerard Mercator's projection map of 1569. At the following coordinates, he lists these statements. At 80 degrees north and 220 degrees east, the ocean breaking through by 19 passages between these isles forms four arms of the sea by which, without cease, it is carried northward, there being absorbed into the bowels of the earth. The rock which is at the pole has a circumference of about 33 leagues. At 72 degrees north and 170 degrees east, Mercator says this: from sheer calculations, it is here that lies the magnetic pole and the very perfect magnet which draws to itself all others, it being assumed that the prime meridian be where I have placed it. He also says this in quote, a monstrous gulf in the sea towards which from all sides the billows of the sea, coming from remote parts, converge and run together as though brought there by a conduit, pouring into these mysterious abysses of nature, they are as though devoured thereby, and should it happen that a vessel pass there, it is seized and drawn away with such powerful violence of the waves that this hungry force immediately swallows it up, never to appear again. Juratus Mercator. Now here's the comment and my response to that particular comment, the YouTube question. It says this: if you can confirm the exact reason the Earth has 2 high tides per day, you will go a long way towards solving this as puzzle. And here's my response to his commentary on the tides. I know this is going to sound crazy. However, in my opinion, it is true. I mentioned this topic in a show that I did on Paradise, the Throne of God, and the North Pole a few months back. Anyways, the Inventio Fortunata, a 14th century book on the journeys of various explorers, which were able to successfully travel to the North Pole and back, mentions somewhere in that text that the whirlpool which surrounds the magnetic lodestone mountain called Rupus Negra changes directions of flow every 6 hours. For one 6-hour period, it will suck in all the waters of all the oceans of the world, and then 6 hours later expel them in flood back onto the earthen plane. This reversal, in my opinion, creates the tides. The 6-hour cycle is representative of the inward inhalation and outward exhalation, the breath of the earth, which is an indicator, yes, and I know this is going to sound crazy too, that Gaia is a living, breathing, conscious, organic being. I believe this understanding to be reflected in the book of Enoch, where it cites the earth laying accusation against the fallen angels and their giant progeny for the slaughter and the madness that they were instigating and perpetuating here upon the earth. That passage is, when they turned themselves against men in order to devour them, and began to injure birds, beasts, reptiles, and fishes, to eat their flesh one after another, and to drink their blood, then the earth reproved the unrighteous. Book of Enoch, chapter 7, verse 13 through 15. All right, here's the final commentary. Yes, I know it sounds crazy. However, if you consider that God is the source of all things, and at the atomic level, all things are composed of light, perhaps light, being a manifestation of the source, has inherent within it consciousness in connecting link to creator. Just a thought. All right, so now I'm going to go back to the passages which affirm what I am speaking about. It says this: Fridor Nansen has found mention of a great northern whirlpool in Norse legends as the world's well, Hivelgamur, which causes the tides by pushing and pulling water through its subterranean channels. Isidore of Seville, the Gesta Hamabursian Ecclesia Pontificum of Adam in the 11th century, and the Topographia Hibernica of Giraldus Cambrensis in 1146, his description of the northern whirlpool is cited by Mercator. The Historia Norvegia 1180 and the Speculum Regale 1250 of Einar Gunnarsson, and a particularly interesting quote from the Langobard author Paulus Warnefield, 720 to 790, also called Diaconus, says this, quote, "And not far from the shore which we before spoke of, on the west where the ocean extends without bounds, is that very deep abyss of waters which we commonly call the ocean's navel. It is said twice a day to suck the waves into itself and to spew them out again, as is proven to happen along all these coasts, where the waves rush in and go back again with fearful rapidity. By the whirlpool of which we have spoken, it is asserted that ships are often drawn in with such rapidity that they seem to resemble the flight of arrows through the air, and sometimes they are lost in the gulf with a very frightful destruction. Often, just as they are about to go under, they are brought back again by a sudden shock of the waves, and they are sent out again thence with the same rapidity with which they were drawn in." Just a little bit more. In Gesta Hammerbergensia Ecclesia Pontificum states that the Archbishop Aldebert told of a team of noblemen of Frisia around 1035 to 1043. They set sail to explore the northern polar regions, and as they headed north beyond Greenland, of a sudden, this is quote, "of a sudden they fell into that numbing ocean's dark mist, which could hardly be penetrated with the eyes. And behold, the current of the fluctuating ocean whirled back to its mysterious fountainhead, and with most furious impetuosity drew the unhappy sailors, who in their despair now thought of only of death, onto chaos. This, they say, is the abysmal chasm, that deep in which report has it that all the backflow of the sea, which appears to decrease, is absorbed and in turn revisited, as the mounting fluctuation is usually described, as the partners were imploring the mercy of God to receive their souls. The backward thrust of the sea carried away some of their ships, but its forward ejection threw the rest of them behind the others. Freed thus by the timely help of God from the instant peril they had before their eyes, they seconded the flood by rowing with all their might." And so you can see that my postulation that the tides are in fact created by the sucking and also the expelling of the oceans by this grand whirlpool, which is located at the center of the earth, is also affirmed by many explorers, and also by Gerardus Mercator and others. And I don't know that I can call her. She can call in the Jazz. Just call in the call-in number, and then we'll see if it connects. And you can go ahead and do so now, because that was the last part that I really wanted to cover. But go ahead, Kathy, if you'd like to comment.
I just think that's really fascinating. I don't think the ocean tides are as we've been told, about the moon and how that they create them. I don't know a lot about it, but I don't think it's that. And so that is like totally fascinating to me. I really liked it.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating to me as well. And as I read from those particular passages, because think about, that in connection with what I had read from that particular passage from the Ecclesiastes. Let me read it again. All the rivers and springs of water continually flow into the water of the ocean, meaning that they're all connected. All the oceans are one giant ocean, not 7 different oceans, and all these different seas, but all the waters of the oceans, all the rivers, all the seas, all the lakes, they're all connected, and they form one giant earthen plane sea level. And everything that is above that sea level is dry land. All right, now I'm going to continue reading. Continually flow into the water of the ocean, which surrounds the world like a ring. But the ocean is not filled, and to the place is where the rivers continually flow. They return there in order to flow from the spouts of the deep. And so it's my opinion that this spouts of the deep is actually referencing this grand whirlpool. There's also a passage, and I don't have it pulled up right now, but in the book of Enoch, when he describes the ends of the earth, at the very ends, and he describes where hell is naked, as it says in Job 26, that where the firmament is not located above this particular portion, that this is also where it describes this whirlpool as being located and centered there as well. I wish I had that up, but I don't.
This is going to be in your next book in the series?
This one is actually in the updated firmament.
Okay.
It's already published and part of that. Now, I don't know how I would be able to call her without disconnecting from.
I gave her the call-in number, but she can't find her phone.
Oh, okay. Well, that would be a problem. She can call in from Skype if she wants, but anyways, I need to get that cleared as well. And remember, the word basin, it means a kitchen sink or a large bowl, which in that verse that I read from Clement, that's what he describes the earth as being. The oceans are held in by the basin of the earth, and that just like Auguste Piccard, he said that the earth looks like a disc with upturned edge. And just like that passage from the Legends of Solomon, it describes the earth, that the bird looked upon the earth as if a man was looking upon a dish. And so all of these very loosely connected and disjointed passages and scriptures and verses and ancient mythologies, to me, all are confirming witness to one another.
I found that one article from another balloonist, and he said, I have never seen, this was in 1871, from his book, Travels in the Air, I have never seen any part of the surface of the earth other than as a plane.
Yes, exactly. And, all of us, like anytime you go up into a plane or you get a travel to a very high mountain, or even that, the individual that did where he looked at the very series of peaks in that video.
Yeah, Mountain of Evidence. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, all of that, in my opinion, all these different things affirm the earth as a plane.
Here's one more I had. It was E.P. Goddard balloon flight in 1858. He said it was a dome above and a similar depression below.
That is so very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And again, those that don't know, Auguste Piccard, when he set that world record as far as elevation and getting, very high up into the sky, he said that the earth looked like a flat disc with an upturned edge.
He got to 52,000 feet. I found that.
Wow, that's amazing. And if you haven't heard Pastor Dean Ogle talk about that in his presentation, look up his shows, Dean Odell. And I believe the series that he did is called the Flat Earth and the Firmament of His Power, I believe is the name of that series. But he talks about looking up Auguste Piccard and the whole Hennessy commercial, which shows the Piccard's exploration of the skies and also the deep water, because they were also submarine explorers as well. And so all of that information is absolutely fascinating, and it's incredible. And to me, it all affirms these all of these different passages that I'm still discovering, the
It,
different articles that you're still discovering, and it's
the
just a mountain of evidence.
publishers of the Alex Gleason book that you just re-released, they said in the forward that arriving at facts concerning those things which the masses take for granted and which things are clung tenaciously to by some persons who regard a popular error of more value than an unpopular truth. And I think that is really true.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, for the many people that are still hesitant to go into to do some examination, some research on this as topic of introspection, and one worthy of examination, really suspend your bias, suspend all your judgmental belief, all of your indoctrination, and just go into it one day with an open mind. Try to debunk it as we did, because in doing so, you will learn, as we did, first, that the earth is in no way moving. It's not spinning once daily. It's not orbiting around the sun. It's not moving at 1 mile per hour, much less 1,037 miles an hour. And this is exactly what the scriptures state as well. They affirm in several passages that the earth is fixed, stationary, unmoving, immobile. And so, are you going to accept the gospel, the word of God for as it is and what it says, or are you going to try to mold it and fix it and shape it? I forget how Rob puts it, but he talks about those that try to, to kind of skew it to fit their indoctrination and their thinking. But in truth, the Bible most certainly is a flat earth book. It supports that the earth is enclosed by the firmament and that we live in an enclosed world system. And
yeah, he said, let the Bible speak for itself. That was on his Testing the Globe site. I watched his video again today where they took the boat across Lake Michigan to see whether or not the Chicago skyline was a mirage. And
Right.
No, it's not. And they they went from one end to the other. It was 46 miles, and you can see the Chicago skyline the entire way. That's one thing that really kicked this off for a lot of people, seeing the picture that was on that weather newscast.
Joshua Nowicki.
Yeah, Joshua Nowicki. They said it was 52 miles away. And at that distance, you shouldn't see the buildings at all. There should be 1,800 feet of curvature. And these are things that people have to wrestle with. And you can't just ignore it and say it's light refraction. There are so many examples. And especially then when you take scripture, and the Bible is a flat earth book through and through. So, it's just a denial, of such a great amount. I just, I had to knock it down piece by piece. And it's hard to take, little jabs coming back and saying, well, what about this? What about that? I've got such a weight of evidence over so much time in reading your books, in scripture. Now it's all there. It's all very plain, but you have to start from a point and open yourself up to looking at what is there for you to see.
Right. Also, for those that want to read in the entirety, because I did not read about Samuel Robotham on what he speculates that are connected to the tides. You can look up the cause of tides in keyword search, the cause of tides and flat earth, and you should be able to pull up the article that I discovered, which also has so many of these source references, and you can read them all for yourself. And also, those of you that have access to my latest book, The Firmament Vaulted Dome of the Earth, it is found in there as well. I speak about the cause of the tides in the chapter on paradise. But I don't guess Jazz found her phone, huh?
No, she did. She said she called, but she says I got stuck. I'm not sure what that means.
Okay, I'm not sure either. But Karen asked, what do you put in search on Google Earth to find the whirlpool? And as far as Google Earth, I would just go to the North Pole, but of course it's not going to show you anything that is there because this is hidden information. They're not allowing this to be well known. And it's only because we have the ancient testimonies of these explorers and Gerard Mercator being familiar with their stories that we even have knowledge of this now. Because, of course, they don't let you just go to the North Pole. Brooks Agnew, he had tried to set up a journey up there, and other people have wanted to do that, and they won't let you do it. And in my opinion, these other explorers, this is what they found when they went there, as cited by the book Inventio Fortunata and these other books that I read from and that gave you, description of. Go ahead.
I investigated several videos and articles, some really good lengthy articles about Captain Cook. His adventures were very interesting. And also recently they have extended the Antarctic Treaty by another 35 years.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
Yes. I mean, all of that's very suspicious. And John Kerry on election night was in Antarctica.
That's interesting. What's he doing down there on election night?
Well, they said it had something to do with climate change, but he wouldn't have had to go there for that.
Why do you got to go there for that?
Exactly. It's just very suspicious to us, who are looking for that kind of thing. But looking at these explorers, Captain Cook, that was really fascinating to me. And so that information is out there. People have, taken that as an area of research. And so I think other people would find that good. His journeys did not match up to the way that we think of Antarctica as a continent. It was much more, it was in line with what we would think. The time it took him in his journeys would align with Antarctica being, perimeter.
A giant ring, yeah.
Yes,
right,
exactly.
Right.
Fascinating.
Right. Again, I want to remind everybody that through Sacred Word Publishing, the company that we have started to make a lot of this information available, we just released our first book, which is a reprint of Alex Gleason, the maker of the Gleason map. The second portion of his book is The Bible from Heaven, which is on Is the Earth a Globe? And it's commentary on his discourse about the flat earth and the things that he learned, which, again, for anybody that does any serious examination of this as topic, it's undeniable as truth. It is something that, all the world makes fun of those that embrace it as truth, but anybody that does any thorough examination of it will also be led to similar discernment. Thank you, Sister Kathy, for joining me again.
Good night,
God
everybody.
bless all of you. Good
God
night.
bless you.
Be blessed.